Hello, everybody. You tuned into the Indiana State Police Roadshow, brought to you by the Indiana State Police Alliance, Cops for Kids, a subsidiary of the Indiana State Police Alliance. With me today, of course, is my partner in crime, Tom Trial, behind the camera, behind the scenes, back in black. He's back putting us on YouTube again after his extended stay off of the air. I think he was actually on vacation, Captain Burton.
I think it's probably the vacation that none of us would have wanted to have taken.
I know somebody that didn't want him to take it, Shelly. Shelly, his wife, said you didn't need to be doing that. But I'm glad he's back, and he's 100% ready to go. Captain, thank you for being with us today. Captain Dave Burton, the Public Information Officer of the Indiana State Police. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Rich. Appreciate the invitation to be here.
And unfortunately, we've got a sad topic that we're going to be talking about today. But I think the more we can get this out, the more information that people know about and see and hear about this can help out on this investigation. And we're talking about the obviously the double homicide there in Delphi and the unfortunate death of those two little girls.
Yeah, very, very sad, very tragic. I know that now we have a reward that is well in excess of $200,000. We are still looking for tips. We've received 8,000 plus tips. Those are still being looked at, each one of them. Some of us, I know, are getting tips sent to us directly. We kind of discourage that because that can slow down the process, but we're not going to turn away the information. So we are working diligently to solve this.
Well, let's start at the very beginning, what we do know, what took place. I know you've been involved up there with Sergeant Slocum and Sergeant Riley, the PIOs up there in Delphi, and have firsthand knowledge of what's going on and during the news release doing the news conference with Superintendent Carter. Walk us through from what we know right now from the very beginning.
Well, we know that one of the parents dropped off Abby and Libby, best friends, to go on a walk in the trail there by the Monon railroad tracks that have been abandoned and over the high bridge there. And the plan was to drop them off and pick them up later. And they did not arrive at the appointed time. And, initially, okay, maybe they're just having a good time out, going to be a little late. But then it goes from being just a little bit late to hours late into darkness. And now true concern about what's happened, what's transpired. And then results in a search the following day. And volunteers that were searching found their bodies. And then we knew that we had a double homicide investigation. And then moving forward from that point, what information that we can publicly share, information that we can't share, because the ultimate goal is to find the person or persons responsible for this horrible crime and to hold them accountable. People talk about giving closure to the family. I look at my son, who's almost 18, and if something like that happened to him, even if the person's caught and held accountable and given the death penalty, and I get to watch the execution, there is no closure.
Right, absolutely.
There's no closure. Yeah. Anybody that's a parent will tell you that losing your child, there is no closure. Mm-hmm. So, but the only thing that we can do is make sure that this person or persons cannot do the same thing again.
And this is kind of a popular place for people to go to walk. It's it's kind of remote, but a lot of people use it.
I think it's something that's locally known and is popular. There's the historic bridge. The tracks, as I recall, were decommissioned in 1985. The rails were pulled off the bridge, and it's 65 feet above ground, I believe is what I was told as it goes across this area. And it's a popular trail area to be walking, and it's by all indications, it's a nice, peaceful area to take a hike. And now we have this happen, and it's never going to be forgotten for what happened there now because of the two girls being killed, because of Abby and Libby losing their lives.
Let's talk a little bit, and you and I were discussing this earlier today before we went on the air, and we've received questions on this, and I know you have. Is there some information out there that we're not releasing?
Oh, there certainly is. And often people ask that they're not involved in law enforcement. Well, why aren't you releasing everything? And sadly, I have to sit here and tell you, I know you know this, but people that are listening or watching today, there are people that will call up and they will claim responsibility for crimes. Or they will call up out of a want for attention, and they will give what they say they have this solid tip information that they want to provide and share. Right. And they've gleaned it from what's been released. The example that I often give, I said, imagine, if you will, that we go to investigate a burglary. And we get there, and then we find out actually it's been a homicide. And the person was killed because they were stabbed twice in the back and they were hit in the head with a lead pipe. If we release that information, then the tips we get all have that same information. Whereas if we don't release that information and then we get a tip that says, yeah, I was at Joe's Bar and Grill. I heard this guy talking about how he had broken into a house and he stabbed a woman in the back twice and hit her in the head with a pipe. Well, if we've not released that information, we get that as a tip. We know, hey, this is some good information.
Right.
Well, there's specific information in this investigation that we're not releasing that if it comes to our attention, we're going to know that's a good tip. Mm-hmm. We need to really pay close attention to that. Now, that said, we're investigating every tip, and there's been over 8,000. We are not going to rationalize away a tip without thoroughly investigating it. And that's what we're telling people. Don't assume, don't make an assumption, oh, this couldn't have been it.
Right.
So what information do we have? What have we released? We've released the audio tape that says, you hear the voice saying, down the hill, down the hill. It's a distinctive enough voice that somebody that knows that person could say, boy, that sounds like fill in the blank of the name.
Right.
Those are the people we don't want you to rationalize away that thought, oh, Bill could never do that. Call us, tell us, let us go talk to Bill. If Bill can validate where he was at that time and we can rule him out of the investigation, that will happen. But if Bill can't do that, and we find other inconsistencies that indicate that he's possibly a valid suspect, then you will have helped us solve the crime. Don't rationalize.
What about suspect as opposed to suspects? Has that been addressed?
What we have publicly addressed is people want to make the assumption that the voice saying down the hill it belongs to the person that's captured in the image from the cell phone. That's not necessarily the case. We're not making any assumption about that. We have more video. We have more audio. But it is specific to the investigation, and that's why it's not being released at this time.
Well, again, you're listening to the Indiana State Police Roadshow, brought to you by the Indiana State Police Lines, Cops for Kids, a subsidiary of the Indiana State Police Alliance. I'm speaking with Captain Dave Burton of the Indiana State Public Information Office, and we're talking about the senseless crime that happened there in Delphi, Indiana, to Abigail Williams and Liberty German when they were senselessly killed up there in Delphi. Dave, you were talking earlier about not releasing some information, and I know the public may have a hard time believing this, but there are people, and you kind of skimmed over it, but maybe address a little bit more, that do call in and say, yeah, I did this.
Yeah, the people do that, and they will call up and take responsibility. Is there an issue of mental illness with people that do that? I would think so. Is it just a lack of attention and they want to have their 15 minutes of fame? I don't think that way. You don't think that way. Most people listening to this program today don't think that way.
Right.
So there's really no way to answer that, but we know it does happen. And that's why we want to minimize. The best example of that is off the subject a little, but Shannon Sherrill, still an unsolved little girl, 1985, was 5 or 6 years old, vanished from her home, never to be seen again. And then it was about 10 years ago, we had a woman call up and say, I think I'm Shannon Sherrill, and I have been abducted. And she was giving all this information. It was very detailed. Well, she had gleaned it all from the internet. Yeah. And this woman had a mental illness. The Sherrill family put them through a living hell thinking that their long-lost daughter had been found and was alive. and there's no indication that Shannon Sherrill is alive. There's no indication that she's dead. So that's why hope lingers on for the Sherrill family, all because of so much information that was out.
Right, exactly. And with the internet having so much information, and we're using it ourselves, to get the information out there, but there's some people can use it, unfortunately, the wrong way.
They certainly can. And, the other thing that we haven't touched on, our show sponsor, the Indiana State Police Alliance. It's the Indiana State Police Alliance that is handling the donation funds.
Okay.
Carroll County is the lead investigating agency,
Right, correct.
but they had no way to have anything set up. Something that the State Police Alliance reached out and said, hey, we think we can do that. They've run a number of accounts for because they're a 501(c) corporation. So they are taking on that responsibility, and we're hopeful to receive that tip that leads to an arrest, that will lead to a conviction of the person or persons responsible for this, and will gratefully write that reward check out.
So how many different agencies are involved in this investigation right now?
We've got about 25 different agencies. Again, Carroll County is the lead investigative agency, but also a lot of resources from the FBI, a lot of resources from Indiana State Police, and then just the private citizens and corporations that have come forward. You heard me mention the rewards up to $200,000. A week or so ago, it was at a little over $100,000. And Pat McAfee, former punter for the Indianapolis Colts, came forward and was getting ready to make a sizable donation. And Jim Irsay, owner of the Colts, reached out and said, Pat, whatever you do, I'm going to match. And the next thing we had, a $200,000 donation. We've had public service announcements. The FBI, the resources that they're bringing forward, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of billboards across the nation that have the information on Libby and Abby on the billboards and the image of the person we're looking for. So the FBI has brought that to the table. So lots of things have come together, and it is very frustrating to go this period of time without an arrest, but we are resolute in our resolve to solve this case.
I was just looking here on the computer at the billboard that is available, and the tip line 844-459-5786. Again, that's 844-459-5786, and that goes directly to the tip line and that's the best way to.
That's the best way. And if you weren't able to jot that number down, if you go to the Indiana State Police website, the first billboard that comes up on our website is linked to the Delphi murder investigation. If you click that, that will give you the email tip line. It'll give you the 800 number, all that information that if you have a valid tip to pass on to us and how to get it to us.
And I know that this has greatly affected that small community up there.
Oh, it certainly has. I've been up there twice, and it's small town Indiana.
Yeah.
And Delphi is I believe the seat of the county, if I'm not mistaken, and it's a population of less than 3,000 people.
Well, again, just to reiterate, Captain Dave Burton's with me today on the Indiana State Police Show, and we're talking about this senseless crime that happened in Delphi, Indiana, to Abigail Williams, Liberty German. They were senselessly murdered up there in Delphi, Indiana, while dropped off at a walking path, the Monon, which is an abandoned railroad track that they were let off at, and then unfortunately found the next day and had tragically been killed. So we want to get this information out and have hopefully somebody with that piece of information.
We know that there's somebody out there that knows or is strongly suspicious of somebody, and we urge that person not to rationalize it. Provide us that tip. We've got all the resources from what we've talked about today to do it.
Great. Well, you've been listening to the Indiana State Police Roadshow, brought to you by the Indiana State Police Lines. Cops are kids. Captain Dave Burson's been my guest. I appreciate you coming in here and talking about this subject, and let's help this family out in this community. Thank you for listening to the Roadshow. We'll talk to you again next week on the Indiana State Police Roadshow. The Roadshow is out.